Yeah, hello. When I was asked to speak here today, no one said that I was going to be the last speaker after such a charismatic lineup right before you need your toilet break and a coffee. So I'm going to try and make this brief. But yeah, I'm James Ritchie. I'm very proud Chief Exec of Techmar Group, which has recently become a PLC. So no offence to the PLC from before. I'm born in Darlington. I've lived in the region all my life, and I'm also very proud to promote the region. And in that capacity, I'm also chairman of Energy Coast, which is a very small cluster group of 20 companies in the northeast that champion the supply chain efforts into the offshore wind farm market. So, quick bit about Tekmar, and this is really just our story, and I hope there's some good takeaways for you there in how we managed to raise our investment. Tekmar was a small company, it was a lifestyle business originally, and we grew in the offshore wind farm market, and I'll give you a bit of the history later on. But when I recently went to float the company, we were too small really to go to the AIM market. We were too small to IPO, but I needed to get out of private equity debt. So I said to the brokers who were talking to at the time, what if we took a vision that we could become a group of companies and we could do what we've done with Tekmar, but we could look at buying other businesses and we could grow and expand in this, we think is a fantastic market opportunity to grow in. So we came up with this vision, which is intended, keep it on that one, sorry, back, here we go, I'm not doing this, go back on. Perfect, thank you. Can I just click here? That's easy. I'll just do the clicking. So our vision was that we wanted to create a group of companies to leverage skills and relationships to become the partner of choice for the supply and installation support of subsea protection equipment to the global offshore energy market. Intentionally very vague, because when we went to market, we didn't want to categorize ourselves into one specific area. When you're trying to attract investment from institutional investors, they've got lots of different theses as to where they're going to put their money. So we try and tick all the boxes in being renewables, in being subsea, in being technology, manufacturing, export. We try to tick every box in terms of what our vision was going to be. But fundamentally, what it is that Tekmar does at its core is we protect anything under the sea that moves, except for the fish. So we protect power cables, pipelines, flexibles, telecommunication cables, anywhere that items that are deployed subsea are subject to any dynamic movement. We look to protect them products using highly engineered composite polyurethanes that we manufacture and engineer solutions to protect these assets subsea in these very harsh environments. And really simply, I'm looking at all these gadgets here. When I explain it to people, what we do is we make very large grommets that go on the back of power cables as they plug in to the base of offshore wind farms. So where we made it really big was with this solution here, which was called Techlink, Cable Protection System. And this is used protecting power cables where they run along the seabed and they transition from burial and plug into the base of offshore wind turbines. And we protect them at that critical interface point. They're about 20 meters long. They weigh about 1.5 tons. They cost about £15,000. And what's really incredible is they're used on 70% of the wind farms in the world today. So Tekmar's quite unique, I believe, for a few reasons. One, we've worked on more named wind farm projects, offshore wind farm projects, than any other company in the world. We've worked on 64 named wind farm projects. We've sold over 6,200 systems, and we protect over 21 gigawatts of electrical infrastructure. So that's, I do believe, to put that in prospect for you, it's about half the homes of Britain equivalent amount of power we're protecting using this core product. We ship that product across 3 continents, and I think what's even more impressive is we're one of the very few manufacturing businesses in the whole of Europe that has successfully exported our technology into the emerging China offshore wind farm market. And yes, if you come to my factory, what I am telling you is we mould plastic in the northeast of England and we sell it to the Chinese, which I think is incredible. And we were one of the first pure play offshore wind farm supply chain companies to go public in the world. So when we went and I pitched to investors in the market, we were one of the first non-utility based, but actually supply chain manufacturing businesses to bring an investment opportunity to the public market, which was very exciting. And we did this really born from a history which was in oil and gas. So a real brief bit of history on the business, because I think this is a fairy tale story for me personally. The business was founded 30 years ago by 2 divers in Norway. They looked to relocate to the Teesside region in '95 to set up what was then a bespoke outfit doing bespoke design and build of equipment for the marine industry, predominantly in oil and gas. But it was very much a lifestyle operation, very light touch. And the reason they picked the Teesside region at the time was it was cheaper than Aberdeen, but it still had the same skill sets in terms of manufacturing subcontractors and engineers. In 2003, they started moulding plastics. It was a very small team of about 4 or 5 guys. And by 2007, the business was turning over about £4 million, had about 20 employees. And then they got a phone call from an oil and gas company, which was called ABB Power Cable Systems. And they said, Tekmar, we're working on our first offshore wind farm project. And what we saw in offshore wind farms at the time was you had a lot of land-based utility companies starting to build these major offshore wind farm projects, and they were very good with the design of the turbines. They took a lot of civils engineering and stuck it out at sea. And that created a big problem for all the subsea infrastructure. And there was a statistic given in the market at the time that subsea cables on a wind farm represented something like 7% of the capital cost to build the entire wind farm. But 70% of the insurance claims were driven from subsea power cable failure. And they needed to address this issue on what was the first commercial wind farm project being built in Germany. So they contacted Tekmar and said, can you come up with a bespoke solution? The engineers who designed loads of stuff in the past in oil and gas said, yeah, it's really easy, we'll just do this. And they sold it for £25,000, single contract, and they were going to leave it, that was it, they were just going to walk away. I joined the business at the same time, very fortunately. I'm a very lucky guy in this respect. And I said, well guys, why don't you let me take that product and I'll go and try and sell it to every wind farm operator, and we'll create this new business, we'll call it Techmar Energy, and we'll separate it from the dirty oil and gas bit, and I'll go and be the cool, clean energy technology bit, and I'll go after every single wind farm operator. And they said, yeah, you crack on, you do that, that will never work. Within 2 years, we had 100% global market share. Every single wind farm operator in the world was utilising our technology. We took a conscious decision, which was very rare for the business at the time, which was we actually wanted to manufacture it ourselves. So I led a management buyout in 2011. I brought in private equity, a firm called Elysian Capital based in the city in London, and said, look guys, do you want to invest in what is effectively a 2-year-old company? It's got a very young management team. We're going into manufacturing and we really don't have a clue how we're going to do it. We're in a market which is very dependent on subsidies and is very volatile. But if you back us, I promise you we'll do a really, really good job. And they did, and then 7 years on, I'm very fortunate to announce that we managed to successfully IPO the company. The first company in 4 years, I believe, that has floated in the northeast region. As I said to you, we did it coming out of what was the first pure play offshore wind farm business. We managed to raise more money than we actually needed, but we raised money for us to also look at inward investment. We managed to get the private equity investors out completely clean, which apparently when I met a lot of these investors is quite rare as well. I never got an MBA, but I always thought the rule was you borrow money and then you pay it back. And that's basically what we managed to do. So we got the private equity out in clean. We floated on a market capitalisation of £65 million. At the time of IPO, 20th of June this year, we were turning over 22 million. 80% of that revenue was into offshore wind, and 70% of our revenue is through exports. We export globally. Right now, today, this year, we've got projects going on in China, South Korea, Taiwan, Japan, the USA, and we're seeing some fantastic growth rates in the business. Our strategy was really simple. What I pitched to the investors was we're going for organic growth in the business to begin with. The market in offshore wind is growing at 17% compound annual growth rate. We've got 70% market share. We've got a strategy for how we maintain that. The second point was give me some money and I'm going to invest in my business. I'm going to expand our technology offering. I'm going to look at gearing our operational efficiency in our factory, and we're going to look at overseas expansion for export as well. But the more exciting piece that we also offered to the market was we're going to move into M&A acquisition strategy as well. Buy companies that have got similar visions, technology focus, and share the same customers. My last slide now, because I've been warned I'm at the final point of my presentation. How are things going so far? It's going pretty well. Within the first 60 days, our shares have increased 23% from £1.30 to now nearing £1.60. Our market cap's gone up from 65 to near 80 million. The analysts have been very kind. They've given a target price of £2 on the shares, so there's still some growth to come from people who are investing in these shares, and we're seeing a good level of liquidity of the average trading of about 46,000 a day. On the business side, we've won the Borsell contract with Ørsted Dong, which is a long-standing customer of ours. Sorry, mate, I know you're a customer as well, by the way. I'll talk to you later. But the reason this was so strategically important is this is the first offshore wind farm that's subsidy-free. Now, when I went out and pitched to investors, I spent about 10 minutes talking about Tekmar, and then I spent about an hour talking about offshore wind farms, because people didn't realise that the cost of wind and renewable technology has come down so fast This is a very commercially viable industry that's getting big investment backing it. We're also the first company in the UK to get accredited for 45001, new standard for health and safety. People are our core asset and we want to look after them. We've opened an office now in China, so we're selling direct into the China market. We continue to export from the UK, so people are frightened when I said we've opened an office in China. They think we're going to move everything out to China. No, that's just so we've got sales presence and local speaking there. All the manufacturing is still done here in the UK. And great pride that I actually went back and bought back the original company, which was the founding oil and gas company, Subsea Innovations. We recently completed that acquisition about 2 or 3 weeks ago, bringing them into the fold now, and they've got a specific focus on pipeline technology, so that's a big benefit to the group as well. I'm going to be here this afternoon, so if anyone's got any questions after that, please feel free to come up and ask me.